back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. With the Astrogate fully in front of us and the Orioles 100 losses ahead and it being the offseason of the National Football League, it is a good time. Any time is a good time to be talking some Terps basketball with this guy. As the Terps, lofty expectations now as a top 10 team and a winning streak. We welcome Mike Ashley back onto the program. He is writing comedy and tragedy and all sorts of things all over the internet from time to time, and usually courtside down at the Xfinity Center for all things Terps, as he will be this week for Northwestern, and as I will be next week when Michigan State comes in. Boy, it's been a while since we've chatted, and, I guess Mark Turgeon can, point at all of us now who've been detractors at any point in the first half when they've been losing, but this team was pretty maligned up until recently. You start to win games out in East Lansing. You start to take on, I think, maybe a different sort of profile from March, right?
Right. Well, a lot of the criticisms that have been levied this year are still true. I mean, they're not very deep. They are prone to scoring droughts, but a win in East Lansing does a lot of good for the psyche. And the fact that they're playing so well down the stretch overall is in some ways some uncharted territory for Maryland basketball. In recent years, this is just a really good mix. What is going on there? And I'm going to say something about this team that hasn't been said, which has been the big knock I think against the program, is they played tough and they out-toughed Michigan State when it counted the most. And again, I don't remember saying that ever about Maryland against Michigan State. I think Maryland had lost it was at least 5 of the last 6 to Michigan State, and had not done well in East Lansing at all, and to come out of there with the win. And Nestor, I've got a weird theory about those kind of games in basketball. To me, sometimes when you have a 15-point lead and you let it slip away and everything's going against you, you have to come back and win the game again. To me, that almost counts as 2 wins. That's the reason I kind of feel good about where Maryland came from, scoring the last 14 points. And Anthony Cowan had to have etched a place in the all-time history at Maryland if he hadn't already done so with his performance down the stretch.
Well, my wife and I went out for dinner on Saturday night, and I'm still trying to get used to, I don't know when the game is next week. I just know I'm going to be going to it, the Michigan State game. 6 p.m. tip-off, and my wife and I were hungry, and we're like, what are we going to do? I'm like, well, the Terps are playing. Why don't we go over to Roost Chris? We can probably get a seat at the bar. It was packed. It was Valentine's Saturday night at 6:15, 6:30. We were very lucky to get seats, and we got seats right in front of the television. So I sat there and sort of planted in, for an hour and a half with it, the last hour and a half of it. And there were some fellows that sat at the table next to me, and they were watching the game. And I think they had some connections to the Mount St. Joe program or knowing some of the guys. And we're talking some basketball. And, I'm literally now at a sports bar at Roost Chris, right? Like, I'm hearing the good, the bad, what you think of Turgeon, what you think of Marcel, what you think of the program, what you think of the Big Ten. And I'm hearing a wide variety of, 30-something, 40-something basketball. These guys were 6'8". The guys that played some ball, and they talk like they played some ball. And the next thing I know, Cowan hits that shot, and, we're all fist bumping, and we're all, there was a moment there where you saw it slipping away, and you're like, I've seen this movie before, right? This is the game the Terps lose on the road at Duke, at Carolina, Michigan State, wherever it is, right? They didn't lose. And I said to Luke earlier in the week, I hope this isn't like the Ravens where this is going to win out and win the Big Ten twice. That would be too much consumer confidence for me. At some point they're going to lose. You would think that losing at Michigan State would be that occasion where you'd say, all right, they gave it a nice run in the beginning, and, at least they didn't stink the whole game, and at least they fell apart at the end, but they didn't. And I think when that happens, it moves it to a different level of, well, what am I doing the third weekend of March?
Right. Yeah, they, and again, to me, what they're doing is somewhat incredible when you think about how little they've got from their bench of late. And then you think about Aaron Wiggins getting hot at the right time, and Ayala finding his offensive game to give them that third score along with Sticks and Cowan. This team really sets up well for the stretch run. And you know what? Once you get Well, after the Big Ten tournament, in particular, once you get in the NCAA, you don't have to be deep anymore. They've got those long 3-minute timeouts. It's almost like the game is played in quarters or eighths. Really, it's just you get those long rests and you get the days between games, and I really think Maryland is set up to do well if nothing terrible happens like at LSU or something like that. And I don't know. I have, as you're alluding to, I think there's always that little bit of skepticism we've come to expect, even on some of Gary's last Maryland teams. You just didn't feel like they could match up with the biggest teams on their schedule, the toughest teams. And you know what? This Maryland group is kind of starting to erase some of those doubts. And you're right. You better make some plans to have your weekends free in March.
Let's talk about the players and what that looks like, Mike. Mike Ashley, tell everybody where to find you. Terrapin Times, you write all over the internet. You write comedy. You're usually out on Twitter with me as well. But tell everybody where to find you.
Yeah, Terrapin Times is where I cover Maryland, also for Field Level Media, and I'm also writing for Baltimore Press Box these days, but not so much Maryland. I'm doing some of the other schools, having a really good time watching some of the mid-majors and catching up with some great stories there. That's where to find me best locally.
Well, for you with Maryland, and we talk about the mid-majors, and I talk to Robert Kennedy here every week from Compass Point about UMBC and Towson and Hopes and Coppin. Obviously, I have my Coppin banner over my shoulder here, and we run their games here at WNST. But for the Terps to take on this sort of hope where you win games like this in a conference where there's deep depth, right? Like Big Ten might be 10 or 11 teams from the conference making the tournament, which would be crazy, right? But they're all going to get together. They're going to have a tournament in a couple of weeks, and whoever survives that, God bless them and all that. But being built to win 6 basketball games in March and into April, there's a part of this for me where Cowan and having leadership at that point guard position and being able to sink shots and, having an NBA prospect and having a team that rebounds pretty well some of the time and can shoot well at various points. I look at them and saying, are they complete? No, this is not, the Steve Blake era, Terps team, but versus the field. When you see San Diego State, whom neither one of us have seen play, although I do want to give a shout-out to Femi Ayabandejo and Jerry Gutierrez from Taco Fiesta, who are my SDSU Aztec grads around here. You got to once in a lifetime, I shout out SDSU. This is going to be the time, Mike. But Maryland probably won't be intimidated by any of these teams either if they survive the Big Ten and only drop one here and lose in the semifinal game after a double bye or play in or whatever. That if they only lose 2 more games somehow, some way, and they wind up as a 2 seed or a 3 seed, whatever it is, there's going to be a level of consumer confidence around here that they could do it. It's not a fluke when you've been doing it the way they've been doing it.
Well, the Big Ten has really established itself as top to bottom the best conference in the country this year, and I think there is something to be said for gutting out tough wins, in that environment. And I think it may help all the Big Ten teams, but you don't know because in the NCAA tournament it just gets down to matchups. Now, for all of Maryland and particularly for that proud basketball program, I would love to see Turgeon take home a Big Ten trophy of some sort this year. You'd hope it'd be the tournament and the regular season, but at least one of them. Maryland needs one of those in their trophy case, so I'm not going to poo-poo what happens there. But if you remember the year...
You think the tournament's important? You really do?
I do. Just because, you need to say that you've done that in the Big Ten, which Maryland can't say yet. Maryland's got this great history, but it hasn't translated to anything in the Big Ten yet. And if you remember the ACC days, how hard it was for Lefty and Gary to get tournament trophies and how special those moments were, you've got a chance to do that again, too. But the year that Maryland won it all, they got bumped early out of the ACC tournament, and that rest was important. So, there is you can get tugged different ways on this. I would like to see Maryland do it all, but again, the conference tournament, those boards now, they look like, the arrivals and departures at an airport. There's so many names on those boards. The tournaments have become just too big, and it's hard to figure out who gets buys in the first rounds and all that stuff. There's double buys, and is that an advantage or a disadvantage? And the conference tournaments have really kind of been ruined since our childhood, I'd say. But that's neither here nor there. As far as Maryland and their personnel,
You've come a long way from me going down to the Capitol Center in '87 with Chucky Brown and Jimmy Valvano, and right?
Exactly.
J.R. Reed, absolutely, man. Those were the good days.
I remember. I was so happy my junior year of high school when I had my car and I parked it strategically right off the field out back where we had PE. I took my shower as fast as we could, and I snuck between the buses and got out to my car so I could get home that Thursday and see the first day of ACC tournament play, from in its entirety. I didn't want to stay around.
Nobody in the stands for the game. Virginia beating the snot out of somebody, right? Samson swatting away. Yeah, I'm with you, man. We're the same guy.
Yeah, but me sitting right there with my 15-cent marathon candy bar. Remember those, the chocolate ones that were so like a foot long, and then my Dr. Pepper in a 16-ounce returnable bottle, So yeah, that was those were the days.
The important things in life.
Exactly. But but anyway, you want me to talk about the Terps? Your boys from Mount St. Joe should be so proud. I really have turned around on Jaylon Smith. Coming into this season, I wasn't really sold on him as an NBA prospect. I knew he was an NBA prospect, but I didn't think he was an NBA player. Now I think he's an NBA player. His defense has gone to another level this year. And everybody's talking about Callan, but if you remember, it was Jalen's three-pointer that started that run at the end of the game. They were down 7, and he hits a big three to start the 14-0 run. And his defense inside, when you think about the guys he's going up against, Kofi Coburn, Luka Garza, who may be the best big man in the country right now, and guys like that are really beasts in the paint in the Big Ten, Jaylon has more than held his own, even though he's more naturally a forward that maybe should be out on the perimeter a little bit more and will be at the next level. But for him to do what he's been doing as a protector in the paint and as a low post scoring threat, it's just been marvelous to see. And the other guy I think has kind of been unsung, and he's had some up and down games here lately, but it seems like Darrell Marcel is in the middle of everything good that happens at Maryland. He's either making stop defensively, or he's doing that little dribble drive and getting a shot up that makes good things happen for Maryland. And he's just been, I think, a real glue guy for this team that may, unless they go a long way, will never get the credit he deserves for another 20-win season here at Maryland.
Mike, for the conference itself and for where it stands as not having 2 or 3 of these undefeated teams, whatever. But for the Terps, 6-8 weeks ago, you lose to Seton Hall, you lose to Penn State, and you say these are tough losses, and where we're going to be, and where's the conference if Penn State's beating Maryland, and Michigan State was thought to be the best team in the land, and now they're not even in the top 25. But there was the part about where you're going to go on the road and you're going to get intimidated out of most gyms. Remember that awful loss Maryland took on up at the barn in Minnesota a couple of years ago when they stunk? That the road is its own sort of minefield here for all of these teams across the country. Home cooking is good across college basketball. But for where the conference is and the perception of the conference and the realities of recruiting and what Maryland represents and leaving the ACC and all the shame of all of that and all that stuff, for the balance of college basketball right now, why is the Big Ten doing better? Is it really because the games are on in New Jersey and Maryland and other places and that, literally?
Well, when you think of the Big Ten, you don't always think of those one-and-done guys. You think of a lot of veteran players, which is a natural advantage now in college basketball if you have that. And the fact now that there are stars that are bypassing college completely, going over and playing in Italy or Australia or something like that, I think we all see that the talent is watered down a little bit this year in college basketball, and I hate to say it, but that may get worse before it gets better, particularly if the NBA changes their rules to allow guys to come straight from high school there. And I just think the Big Ten was a little bit better positioned to take advantage of this. You know, you look at the ACC, it really is just it's been weird to watch this year what has happened to so many teams there. The injuries on top of the early defections at Carolina has just made them unwatchable. And, you know, UVA is not the same team they were last year, and Duke's not the same team either. They're still really good. And suddenly here's Florida State, a program you never talk about their guys leaving early or anything, but they you know, Leonard Hamilton's just done a great job there. But I mean, after those Louisville, Florida State, and Duke, you know, who really scares you in the ACC now? And I just think the Big Ten was better positioned to handle some of these things, whether that's good or bad. You say they're not getting the biggest stars out of high school, but there's some dang good players, especially when you look at a guy like Jaylon Smith, what he's played himself into this year. And now, you know, is there a player right now that deserves more respect in college basketball than Anthony Cowan? I mean, come on.
Well, I mean, and that's where you earn that in March, right? You don't earn that with by losing in the 32, right? And just getting to the 16, while good enough in a lot of places, I don't know that would be good enough for Turgeon at this point with how this team has played. And they better not trip up and lose 3 or 4 games and take a first-day facer, right? And, you know, that would be a concern. But they've played long and hard and strong and well and home and road and all of that. But the Michigan State thing, I think, has turned consumer confidence around. Mike Ashley joining us here. You mentioned mid-majors and local and all that stuff. I want to give you a little oxygen to talk about some local basketball around here because we like to do that. I know Juan's working hard at Coppin, and I know Ryan Odom trying to recover from injuries, and Towson is at various points played pretty good basketball. Hey, they all won last week, right? I mean, we had a week of peace around here.
Yeah. I just did a story on a kid at Mount St. Mary's, Damian Chong-Kui, who a point guard who began his career as a walk-on and now in full scholarship. He's a 2-year starter as a sophomore. Just a really incredible story that he lost his mom when he was incredibly young, and then his father was shot and is paralyzed. So here's a guy that grew up having to help care for his dad, be a major caretaker, and his dad inspired him to want to play basketball, and because his dad had played, and this kid is going through all that, and he's so small. He's 5'8", 145 pounds, and he couldn't get any D1s interested in him. He went to prep school in New York, and he finally gets a chance to walk on at the Mount, and I mean, my gosh, now, like I said, he's a 2-year starter. He's kind of the nuts and bolts of the team, makes things happen for him. It's just really a great story. You run into all kinds of stories like that at mid-majors. And around here, the basketball, in the Maryland area, the DMV is so good. There's just a lot of good kids like that. It's kind of fun for me to get a chance to catch up with some of them.
And no reason to think the Mount can't be dribbling around in a tournament game, right? And they can't raise hell the way UMBC did a couple of years ago because UMBC did it, right? And Coppin's done it. So there is that part of the little engine that could for any of these programs, and teams trying to put it together. I mean, even Loyola winning games and, trying to get back up and claw Coppin State after what they've been through. Towson, all of these programs have had some real doldrums, right? I mean, they've had some real depths of where the bottom is, and all of them at various points have risen up.
Well, Towson, it's pretty steady, but they've been rebuilding this year, and again, I think they got a chance to get some momentum going at the right time heading into the tournament. The Mount is incredibly young. Last year, I think they had 9 freshmen or something like that, and this year there may still be a year away. But what you're saying is a good point, and I think people underestimate what a quality of basketball is played at that level. And if you get a chance to go out and watch those tournaments, where, it's not like the Big Ten where so many teams are just automatically expecting to get their name called on Selection Sunday. These other leagues, man, it's a dogfight. You got to go in there and play your best basketball for 3 or 4 games there at the end of February or beginning of March to even think you're going to get a chance to play in the NCAA, and that's what all these kids are dreaming about. And I'm telling you, the semifinals in leagues like that are one of the best nights of basketball you could ever see as a fan.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that from being out at Towson and, when there were conference tournaments many, many years ago at the old Towson Center. But as a longtime supporter of the Radford Highlanders at 17-9, and winning games now at Campbell. Big rivalry coming up with Winthrop in the Big South, right? Like you're all about that, right? You're all about
trap, Nestor.
What's that?
Yeah. Well, Radford beat Winthrop last week and tied. So they're in the Big South, a one bid league. It's Radford and Winthrop coming down the stretch with Dark Horse Gardner Webb right up there too. And Hampton's got a kid named Jermaine Morrow, I think is third in the NCAA in scoring this year. And they've also got a kid named Ben Stanley, originally for Baltimore, who was eighth in the NCAA in scoring. They're a lot of fun to watch. But yeah, that's a fun league too. And Winthrop was a surprise to me this year. I mean, I picked them. Pat Kelsey, their coach, is going to be coaching someplace bigger very soon. I had them picked, I think, third in the preseason. And then this 6'10" kid, Burns from Tennessee, somehow got a waiver after he transferred back to his hometown in Rock Hill to play for Winthrop. He got a waiver and became eligible this year, and that just changed everything. It made Winthrop hands down the best team in the league, and they play a brand of basketball. It's a lot of fun, very exciting. Get up and down the court, score about 80 points a game, and then Radford is the opposite. They just grind it out defensively and make life tough. But they've got a kid named Carleek Jones who, at Radford, I guess they're kind of worried that he may be one of those grad transfers next year, because I'm sure there's already bigger schools saying, Carleek, come play for us, because this kid is about as clutch a player as I've seen anywhere since maybe, I don't know, Juan Dixon, okay?
Wow, look at that. I mean, I know you're talking Coppin State. Big South, their conference tournaments like UMBC, like they play on home court, higher seed, right?
Yeah. The first rounds are at the highest. The first rounds are like at higher seeds per school, and then the conference regular season champion gets to host the semifinals, and then they have a day break, so it's like a Thursday, Friday, and if the conference champion, regular season champion, gets upset, the championship game on Sunday moves to the highest remaining seed, and 2 years in a row, Radford landed that. They were the number 2 seed 2 years in a row. They got to host it 2 years ago, and they beat Liberty at home. And then last year, Gardner Webb upset them at home. Gardner Webb had I don't know if anybody remembers, but they had UVA down 16 points too, in the first round of the NCAA. So you can't turn your head on those leagues, as people around here definitely know, thanks to UMBC.
Well, we don't want anybody streaking out into the New River down there, Radford University, off of 81. We can't get people too excited.
You should mention that the Polar Plunge is this weekend down there. I'm told. I don't take part in that. There's not enough beer in Radford to make me want to jump in the New River in February, but we'll see what happens.
I have a dear friend whose granddaughter is strongly considering Roanoke. So, time will tell. Blacksburg up the road. There's a lot going on down there in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Mike Ashley, Radford connected and Maryland connected as well at Terrapin Times and at Press Box locally for all things college basketball. Always good to have you. Good to hear your voice. I don't have you on often enough. I'm going to bug you a bunch over the next month now that I'm off the schneid.
Let's talk once the tournaments get rolling here. That's the most fun time of the year for me.
It's the most wonderful. It allows me to not have to talk about the Houston Astros, so I like that.
Yeah, are you getting a lot of that?
I'm getting a lot of that, and of course we have an election here in Baltimore for a mayor, which I'm taking all of that on because we need to fix our city too. So I'm on all of that over the next 8 weeks.
I just tweeted this morning. I don't see what the big deal is about the Astros possibly getting beamed by opposing players. Don't they have a trash can signal for that the next pitch is going to be in your chin? I don't see why they would be so worried about it.
Cheating sucks, man, and across all the spectrum, and we are not. We're, when it comes to criminals and when it comes to cheaters, I don't know that we're really making the message we need to make as a society when it comes to that.
There is no question about that.
Especially for those of us who try to follow the rules. You know what I mean? Right?
I know.
Appreciate you, man. Be good. Mike Ashley, go follow him out on Twitter. Follow him at Pressbox. Follow him at Terrapin Times. And hopefully following him around here. And hopefully following a couple of more Terrapin victories. I'll be seeing the Terps in person next week. Michigan State. Thanks, Jack Krabby. Appreciate you down there. Go Terps. Maryland, we're all behind you. Nasty at WNST.net can find me. BuyAToyota.com Audio Vault. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Probably eating some Pizza John's or talking about my investments at Raskin Global or telling you about my Royal Farms coffee and those Western fries I haven't had yet this year that I have to have. I want them to be hot and crispy. I want some chicken with it and a roll and a box and a gallon of gas and a pint of Ben & Jerry's. Sounds like a trip to Royal Farms. Real fresh, real fast. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. Don't forget the soup and the tomato soup and the grilled cheese as well. We never stop talking hunger pangs and ROFO.